Good day, Amy. It is so good to have you joining us on the Coach Launch podcast today. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Really excited to dive into what we've got going today, ladies and gentlemen. Please let's welcome to the Coach Launch podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Amy Thompson, a compassionate pediatric occupational therapist and feeding specialist, joining us. Amy is dedicated to helping parents navigate the challenges of extreme picky eating, transforming mealtime struggles into moments of grace with her expertise and support. Having recognized the gaps in traditional medical systems, Amy has inspired to create the Mealtime Makeover Framework, a personalized approach that empowers families to expand their children's food variety, foster calm mealtimes, and enhance nutrition. Let's discover how Amy is making a significant impact in the lives and families across the globe. Amazing, Amy. This is so cool. I'm really interested in this topic that we're going to dive in today. Really looking forward to getting to know you more. Are you ready to go?
I am ready.
Let's do this. All right. So you're helping parents. You're a coach, right? You've built yourself around years of your experience in working with children, a system that helps parents get away from we all understand that children can be so picky when they're young, right? And if that's not addressed or managed in the right way, can lead down the track to all kinds of things that can go wrong, right? And so I love the market that you're in and this sector that you're in, and it's so, so needed, I think. Tell me a little bit so far. What have you accomplished, or how have you helped people so far in what you've been doing?
So, I've been a pediatric occupational therapist and I've specialized in feeding for over 20 years now. And I've helped families in many different ways. I've worked with really medically fragile kiddos at our children's hospital here where I live. I've worked in clinics, I've worked in the home setting. But more recently, I started my own practice, Little Table of Grace Coaching, where I'm really helping families with extreme picky eating, overcome that downward spiral and improve nutrition. And I kind of help families anywhere along that continuum if they're just struggling with picky eating, or families whose child might have certain diagnoses like autism or ARFID or sensory processing disorder, and really helping them to overcome these challenges.
Amazing. So you've been doing this for 20 years so far. You must have seen some crazy things going on over the years. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it all. I work with some of the most extreme kind of pediatric feeding disorders. So some of the kiddos I work with, their nutrition is so limited because the foods that they'll eat are so limited that sometimes these kiddos might need to have feeding tubes to kind of help support them through this process. But there's, even if a child has a feeding tube, there's so many things that we can do to help overcome, those challenges that they're having. And then also, I mean, yes, I've seen it all. I've seen kids not come to the table because they're so anxious about a new food being on the table. Or even some kiddos, if they just see or smell a new food, they might gag or vomit. I mean,
Wow.
there's a whole continuum of how
Spectrum.
extreme feeding challenges can be.
You've dedicated to helping parents, but you've recognized that there's gaps in the traditional medical system. Talk to me a little bit about that, because this is what you filled in. You found a gap and you're ready to go and help and transform in that gap. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I love that you asked me that because that's where my heart is, and that's why I started my own practice. So, I've again been practicing for 20 years and I've always loved my job. But in the traditional medical system, there can be hurdles. For instance, when working with insurance, sometimes insurance will only allow a certain number of visits, and it's not enough visits to truly help the family. Or, in the clinic that I was in prior, families would be on my wait list for months because, what I do is such a specialty and a niche. And I hated seeing families on my wait list for months and months to be turned down by insurance, or when I did have an opening, it would be during the day, but their child was in school. So there was just, it was hard to truly give families the support they needed. But more than that, I was stretched so thin, working full time and seeing clients back to back. I felt like I wasn't able to give them everything that I could give them. And so switching to my own practice, I've created programs to where I can really hold a family's hand and walk them through all the steps and provide support in between our one-on-one sessions and give them all the resources I have. So it's great for the families I work with, but it's been so fulfilling to me that I can finally give all my knowledge with more purpose and truly helping families that I work with.
Amazing. I love that. There is a lot of gaps in that. And as a parent myself, I can understand that the frustrations that so many people must go through in that system. Tell me, you've always enjoyed your job. How did it all start? Go back to the beginning. Like, where did this
No,
all come to be?
yeah, okay. So it all started when I was in college. I'm in Texas. I went to the University of Texas here in Austin, Texas. And I
Yeah.
knew a need for a family who had a little boy with autism. And so I started to see that there was a therapy world of pediatric occupational therapists and speech language pathologists and kind of just more understanding that world of children with special needs. So that's what introduced me to occupational therapy, which is I'm an occupational therapist. Yeah, and then after I graduated from UT, I got my master's. I moved to Houston. I got my master's in occupational therapy. But yeah, that's what started me down the path of my job. And then my f-
Let's dive into that for a minute. 'Cause I like hearing people's stories. Stories are so interesting to me. How old were you when you were nannying, by the way? Like, it must have been early on
say that again. How old was I when what?
when you started nannying.
Okay, so yeah, I was probably 20.
Wow, interesting. And so this is a really unique context, right? So 20 years old, you've gone in to support a family and help and the child that has special needs, and that's not an easy thing to do. First of all, right? That takes a certain type of person to do that, and I applaud you for that because not many people can even attempt to do that because I have friends that have been in that space, and it's a tough gig, right? To work with special needs. And so you have to have strong acumen and you have to be willing to serve at that level, right? So, wow, amazing job for even going into that space. And so you're doing this incredible work and you noticed something. You noticed that there was a way to help. Talk to me about that. Like there was a moment, right? This isn't just, you've kind of just brushed over it, but this is an important pivot, isn't it?
Um, I've always had a heart for helping. I mean, even since I was a little girl, I always knew I wanted to do something when I was an adult to help others. But yeah, I think just when I started nannying for this little boy that had autism, I didn't really realize that there was pediatric therapists out there that really helped kiddos with special needs. So it just kind of opened my eyes and I was like, that's what I want to do. And it's like I decided and it just, my path just unfolded and became a
So how,
pediatric.
how did you How did you come across, because you're obviously helping this child. I mean, a pediatrician doesn't just pop into the world. Were you going with them to a place? Did you
Yes.
end up meeting a certain person? Was it a person that changed the way you're thinking? Like how did that eventuate? Like I'm interested in
Yeah,
this.
I was taking him to his therapies and watching his therapists at the time work with him and
Wow.
seeing his progress. And, at that point in time, I didn't know anything about feeding therapy because now I'm a feeding therapist, but I was watching the occupational therapist and the speech therapist work with him and seeing his progress was incredible. So,
You
yes.
see, that's the depth, right? So I love this. You're going to these sessions with the child and you were watching people in action. And you saw results, and that sparked something inside of you, which is amazing, right? Like there was a moment, like this is a powerful, important moment in your life, really, if you think about it, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Yes.
And so from there and seeing all these results, how did your journey evolve from there?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I saw that, graduated from undergrad, knew I wanted to become an occupational therapist, went and got my master's in occupational therapy. But then, because OTs work with adults also, but I always knew I wanted
What's
to work with
OT? OT is
occupational
occupation.
therapists. But I always knew I wanted to work with kids. So after I graduated from, I got my master's in occupational therapy. I then switched over to pediatrics and started working my first job at our children's hospital here in Austin and loved it because there you're working with really medically fragile kiddos. And I worked in the ICU and in acute care. So with, kiddos with brain cancer, car accidents, a lot of just really big things. But that's where feeding got introduced to me. And then I,
Why?
started becoming,
Why
say that
why
again.
fe why feeding? Why feeding? How did that become important? I need to
It
understand
all
this.
Yeah, I love how you're asking all these questions. So, when I was at the children's hospital, they kind of just put me with training in our NICU, which is, teeny neonatal infants that are needing support with feeding. So I got that
Yeah.
infant feeding piece, and because I was becoming trained as a feeding therapist, I also then worked with kiddos like in the ICU or on the acute care floors who are struggling with feeding. So, like infants, a whole slew of medical things can affect feeding, but helping them with taking the bottle, coordination of their suck,
Wow.
swallow, breathe, and then down on the other floors, kiddos who've had strokes or brain injuries or heart issues, it affects feeding. So sometimes these kiddos couldn't eat because of whatever they're going through. And then as a feeding
Yeah,
therapist, we help them get through that.
that's amazing because this is, like, so foundational to what you're doing, right? There was this core venture that you went on, and you were deeply involved in the trenches with kids that were struggling to eat, and for whatever reason, it was a difficult time for them, and you were helping them get through this process, right? That built such a core foundation in what you're doing right now. That's amazing. How long did, like, why is feeding so important? Why is mealtime so important? Why is all this even so important? Talk to me a bit
Uh,
about that.
it's so important because if you think about it, we eat several times a day, every day. So for kids and their parents, if feeding is off, it affects their everyday all the time. But for parents, it's being able to feed your child. There's an emotional connection, and when families can't figure out how to feed their child, or where feeding is a struggle for their child, it creates so much anxiety within parents because food is nutrition, and we need nutrition to function. I mean, it's a lot of people who aren't in it don't understand how important and stressful it can be on a family.
I can totally understand. From my perspective, I can understand. I've been through that transition. And when you, two things for me stand out, right? Is trying to trying to feed a child and they're saying no. So you feel guilty, first of all. And if you can't get them to do it, eventually you kind of just give up saying, oh, we'll work it out later. And then that then, turns into something worse down the track because kids need to eat healthy, sustainable food to grow properly,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yes.
So you're in this place, you're doing this work, helping to get kids to eat. In this, did you figure out some cool stuff that could help you to make this an easy transition for families, for kids, for parents? Like, talk to me about how you came across, and you must have got some unique skills in this. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So over the years, I've taken countless courses and trainings to really become a specialist. And so now I'm kind of more specializing in the extreme picky eating space. But yeah, I mean, I've taken a lot of, courses and have mentors that have really helped me build my knowledge and my expertise on how to identify root causes and then how to address those root causes, how to improve nutrition, and really just kind of look at the whole picture to help these families, overcome these challenges.
Amazing. And how many years have you been doing specifically working in the feeding space
I
or
mean, really
picky eating space?
picky eating space. So, you know, as a feeding therapist, it started at the very beginning, so a little over 20 years ago. But I would say really honing in on the picky eating space. I mean, it's close to that. I mean, it would be close to 20 years.
Wow.
Um, really helping families more on the picky eating feeding challenges.
It's amazing. So you got a full 20 years of experience doing this. And so I'd say you're pretty good by now.
You know what? I've worked with a lot of families. I've taken a lot of trainings and I love what I do and I definitely have a heart for what I do. And I think I am I think I'm good within my space. I definitely want to help families.
So if you're, talk to me about some of the transformations that you're helping parents get. Like that must be it's the most rewarding thing, right? Taking the
Yes.
kids and getting them to a place where everyone's feeling happy about the situation. Talk to me about what that looks like.
Yeah, so like an example could be maybe I start working with a child who has sensory sensitivities, which is some kids their brains overly react to the way foods smell or taste or look or feel. So some kids, might gag or vomit at the looking at a certain food or complete meltdowns if you put a new food on their plate because they're so anxious about a new food being on there. So a transformation could look like, when I start seeing a child they can't even tolerate a new food on their plate. A lot of times, we'll have to put the new food on another plate and, like, put it on the other side of the room. But after working with me, we can get to a place with going through systems of, maybe now they can tolerate that new food on their plate, or maybe they can take a teeny tiny bite of that new food. And then, obviously, the overall goal, because if you're afraid of one food, there you're gonna be a f there's you're gonna be nervous or overwhelmed with a range of foods, so but yeah, the idea is just to help kiddos expand the foods that they'll eat, and then over time, work towards improved nutrition, but as you can see, it's a process for a lot of kids, it's not like snap of a finger and it's gone. It's a process, but I definitely teach families how to go through that process and overcome extreme picky eating.
Like at the end when they've got that all worked out.
Yeah. So, my goal, and it's usually always a family's goal too, is to eat a variety of foods from each food group so that we have like a more well balanced nutrition and improved nutrition. But yeah, and then a big thing is just meal times to be positive again. So, a lot of times when I'm first working with a family, kids are crying, the parents are crying. I mean, it can be complete chaos coming to the
Yeah.
table. But another huge
Yeah.
goal through that transformation is that the whole family can sit down at a mealtime together and eat one meal
Wow.
together with peace and to connect because, food and mealtime is a time to connect with your loved ones, so that would be
Yeah.
the yeah.
And I can so resonate with that. Like it's so important to be able to sit at a table with your kids and everyone's enjoying a good meal together and you feel good about the nutrition that they're eating, right? Talk to me a
Yes.
little bit about the consequences of letting it go. Like, because I think I've seen oftentimes some parents just let it go, right? Like, we'll just give them chips, we'll just give them whatever they want. Like, talk to me about what's the consequences of all of that. I mean, I'm sure there's a few layers that you can dissect there.
Absolutely. Yes. Most of the families that I work with have gotten to a point where they've just let it go. It's not their fault. It's because it's so stressful and so overwhelming, and they've tried everything and they truly don't know what to do. But what can happen is when we go down that downward spiral and just kind of let it go and just allow our kids to eat whatever they want to eat, it it makes our kiddos become more and more rigid, and they will demand more and more only their favorite foods. So it truly does exacerbate that downward spiral. But also it impacts nutrition, because if we just let our kiddos only eat what they want to eat, they're likely going to eat, I call it their 10 out of 10 food, which is their favorite food. Usually those are not the nutritious foods. And so, yeah, it can affect their nutrition. We all know that nutrition affects our kids' development and energy and gut health and, attention and focus and learning. So it affects everything.
Wow, and that's so important to understand the context of that, right? Because with the growing obesity epidemic and the growing ADHD problems that we have out there, and the medical system pumping more chemicals into kids these days, it's a big problem, right? And I think that it starts there, starts where you're at, right? It starts with having a good mealtime and understanding the value and the benefit of that healthy mealtime consistently, right?
Yes, I agree.
What, what, would,
Yeah.
what would you say about that?
Oh, what would I say about the value of mealtime and nutrition? It's huge. I mean, the value of mealtime helps us connect with our kids or our kids connect with us as parents. So, having a positive, peaceful mealtime, it's so important with that connection and bonding with family and friends. And then, yeah, the value of nutrition, it's it's imperative. I mean, good nutrition really helps our kids to truly function more optimally in school with their friends, their behavior, their mood. It does. It really does impact the whole child, but not even the whole child, the whole family.
Same. I have a friend, he's a really good friend of mine, and his kids have special needs. And there was a time when he didn't get to see them for a while. And when he did get to see them eventually, they were in quite a state. They couldn't focus. They were having trouble at school. They were getting kicked out of school. They were like, there was so much going on there. And the teachers were kind of just, get like, let go of the problem, even though the kids were in a special school that was designed to help these kids. And he was quite in a state at the time. And one of the key things that he did was to get the nutrition in check and in balance. And I can categorically say that by doing that, everything has changed in his
Love
whole
that.
family. Like his kids are now attentive at school. They're able, like, there's more to it than just the eating, but the feeding was 100%, he said to me, was a game changer because now they're more focused, they're more attentive, they're more doing their thing at school. And so I can imagine for any parent, once they get that lined up and they have their kids doing the thing and keeping the routine and eating well, and it's not a mess at dinner time or meal time, like what a huge good feeling that is, right? Like you
Yes,
feel like you've accomplished,
absolutely. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And so I applaud you for what you're doing here. It's amazing. Talk to me
Y-
about the Mealtime Makeover Framework. What
Yeah.
is that all?
Yeah, okay. So now that I've kind of started my own practice, which is called Little Table of Grace Coaching, the um the package that I offer families, I've named it the Mealtime Makeover Program. But basically, it's right now it's a 6-month program where families work directly with me to kind of guide them, meet them where they're at, whatever challenges they're facing, and then we go through a whole system to help reach their goals, which typically is help their child become less anxious around new foods, help their child expand their food range, the parent be confident and know how to serve meals, reduce meal times, improve nutrition, So, the Mealtime Makeover program has that component, but I also have online courses that I've created for parents. I provide one-on-one coaching, I provide group coaching. I have kind of like a resource vault with recipes and meal planning and handouts I've created. So it's truly a package that I've created where everything I know as a feeding therapist for 20 years, I've put it in this program to help parents truly reach the transformation that they're wanting.
So talk to me. That sounds amazing. I love all that. So talk to me about the actual process, how you would go through. Talk to me about, give some advice or like your tips or strategies for helping parents to get in control of this.
Yeah. So, first, we have to identify the root causes, right? So, if we don't understand why our child is struggling with feeding, it's really hard to make changes. So, there's several root causes. It can be anxiety, it can be sensory sensitivities, temperament, medical issues. There's a lot of root causes that can go into this. But once we identify the root causes, I know exactly how to address those root causes to kind of get them to that place. And then, I do always start with every family. I call them the foundational practices, but there's things that every family can start doing to kind of build the foundation of tackling picky eating. And a big piece of it is letting go of pressure, which is hard for a lot of families. But the more pressure we put on our kids to eat these foods that they're afraid of, it just puts their guard up and they become more and more rigid. Another piece is helping families understand that the behavior you're seeing, like the refusal or the meltdowns or the anxiety, it's not them being bad or defiant. Like understanding that your kid isn't being bad, they're truly struggling, right? They truly have a root cause that's creating this problem. And then again, yeah, teaching families these routine and structures around mealtime that they implement day in and day out consistently to make that transformation. So that's kind of usually where I start with families.
So let's talk about the root causes. So list them again. You said give me. You said there were seven of them. Can you list those?
Yeah. So root causes can be medical conditions like GI issues, reflux, constipation. So just kind of some GI things that
Right.
could be going
Yep.
on.
Yep.
Sensory sensitivities is incredibly common with picky eaters.
Explain that. Explain sensory sensitivities. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. So sensory sensitivities is where our brain kind of processes sensory input at a heightened experience. So, for example, some kids are overly sensitive to the way a food might look or feel or smell or taste to where it's actually
Right.
like repulsive or noxious to them. So I see a lot of kids, like again, like might smell, I don't know, let's just say broccoli, even though broccoli does kind of stink. But they might smell broccoli, and like you and I would be like, oh, okay, that doesn't smell good. But kiddos with sensory sensitivities, their nervous system, it
Right.
literally, they could gag or vomit. So you
Yeah.
can imagine these kiddos, their experiences are so repulsive that they try to then avoid food as a coping mechanism, right? To
Mm.
kind of protect themselves. So this is where then these feeding refusals come in.
Yes. Gotcha. So we got medical, sensory. What's
Uh-huh.
next?
So another one can be temperament. So a lot of the kids that I'm working with, they have more of a temperament where maybe they like things that are more familiar. They don't like change. They might tend to be a little bit more anxious or have a little bit more worry about things. So when kiddos
Yeah.
kind of have that just temperament, it can sometimes just lead to or kind of that the pick eating can become a little bit worse with this type of temperament.
Gotcha. What's next?
Another one can be motor difficulties. So some kids truly struggle with the motor coordination or the strength of chewing and swallowing. Um,
Oh.
so, some kiddos that I work with might aspirate because the coordination of chewing or swallowing is difficult. So we might have to modify the foods they eat or thicken their liquids. I'm going into all of this now, but some kids truly don't have the motor skills or the coordination to chew and swallow. And that's a whole other component. Um,
Gotcha. What's
but
next?
yes. So, and then another piece, and it's not the parents' fault, but it's we as parents, we fall into this spiral of only giving our kids their favorite foods.
Mm.
When our kids say, no, I want mac and cheese for dinner, we'll give them mac and cheese. So we as parents, because it's so stressful, we fall into this cycle of our kids kind of demanding what to give them. And so it just exacerbates that downward spiral.
Interesting. So interesting. And you mentioned anxiety as one of them.
Yes, 100%. Anxiety can play a huge role, and that's kind of in the temperament piece. But most of the kids that are truly struggling with extreme picky eating have a lot of anxiety around something new or unfamiliar being on their plate. And so, like, for example, maybe they'll eat a grilled cheese in a square shape, but if you cut it
Yeah.
into triangles, you changed it, and that makes them it's different. And so they might not even eat a food with the shape change. So there's all different degrees and severity of this, but
Interesting.
yes,
I
anxiety,
want, can we dive into one of these?
100%.
And I think what I would, because this resonates the most with me, is giving in to kids. As a parent, I've I have struggled with that myself. I've given in to my kids, right?
Me too.
So let's address that. And as you said, it's not the parents' fault. Sometimes it's overwhelming for parents as well, right? Kids screaming, you're just like you don't want them to be upset, and so it's a difficult decision or transition. How would you help in that instance? Like, let's move to the parents. Like, how would you help parents get to this mode or change their mindset or have different way of thinking about how they're managing or dealing with, besides the fact that they need to come and speak with somebody like you, because that's super important. That helps to raise the bar and give them the speed, fastest path forward. But talk to me, give us some tips on how we as parents can be more adaptive to the situation.
Yeah, so we as parents, to help us not give in so quickly, I first just want to start with this. There are some kids that are so severe along this continuum that parents have no other choice because otherwise their kid would not eat. So I don't want to speak to that parent because they are in crisis, right? So to answer your question, I'll kind of speak more to more like picky eating, typical picky eating. But really
Yes,
it's
please.
we as parents, we choose what's served, right? And then our kids choose what to eat and how much. So really trying to get into not allowing our kiddos to demand, I only want my favorite food every night for dinner, because that will just continue that downward spiral. And then your child will become more and more rigid, and it'll be very hard to get out of this. So just
Yeah.
trying to, as the parent, you decide what to serve, but then you let go of the pressure, and then your child decides, what they eat on that plate and how much. But that being said, when we, the parents, serve foods, we're not going to always serve foods that we know that they don't have the skill to eat, like lasagna or broccoli, if we know our kiddo cannot eat those foods. So we want to always serve foods that we know they can at least. So I always tell families, always put at least 1 to 2 foods on the plate that you know they feel comfortable and safe with. So that way they're getting nutrition. We as parents aren't getting anxious that our kids ate nothing for dinner. So those are a couple little tips.
Very good. I love it. And what are the key ages of children that you work with typically?
It's a great question. So, yeah, I really work with kiddos. I say toddlers to teens. So picky eating typically comes about in those very early toddler years. And there is a typical stage of picky eating in those toddler years. Picky eating can be very typical for a toddler, but they should outgrow it within, 6 to 9-ish months. And so if they're not outgrowing that phase, there could be an underlying root cause. And then I absolutely
Sure.
have teenagers, 16 to 18, still struggling with picky eating. Parents are getting really worried. They're about to go to college. They're terrified. What is my child going to eat? So, yeah, I tell families I work with kiddos, toddlers to teens.
Amazing. The work that you're doing is just incredible. I think there's such a big demand for that. Knowing what I know about my journey as a parent and seeing, and here's the thing, and without, like, it's just an interesting phenomenon that a lot of parents just seem to give up.
Huh?
Is it?
Yes.
And it's because the kids then go into the cycle of perpetual downward cycles of food. And when that happens, like there's a point of no return, I'm assuming, right? Like where you're just going to be like, it's not much you can do now. Like they just decided, right? Like you go past their teens, like you kind of lost them if they haven't kind of figured stuff out for themselves. So we've
Yeah.
got a limited time to really make good decisions or help our kids make good decisions. And I
Yes.
see a lot of parents have just given up, and it's sad.
And yes, it is. And it's also hard for parents because a lot of medical professionals don't even know that services like what I do exist. So, medical professionals might tell parents, oh, they'll outgrow it, even though they're 12 years old and they've been struggling with this since they were one. Or, oh, if they're just hungry enough and you eliminate all snacks, they'll eventually eat. And so there's a lot of myths out there around these feeding struggles that then parents do feel hopeless because, medical professionals that they trust, they voice their concerns and they don't feel supported. And it's no one's fault. It's just lack of understanding, right? But absolutely, then parents don't know what to do.
It's yes, and I suppose, like you just said, and I didn't know that there's somebody like you out there that helps. And as I said before this session, where were you 5 years ago?
Mm.
But the world is changing, and you've obviously found yourself an amazing sector, an amazing niche, and obviously it's serving you well. How how are you finding, like, are loads of people coming to you? Like, what is business looking like for you?
Yeah, business it's looking good. There is a lot of families out there who are struggling with this. And that's another thing that I love about my programs is part of my program is I also do group coaching calls and where the families within my program will all get on together and ask questions. And these parents are shocked that other parents are going through the same struggles as them. So I think a lot of times people don't understand that a lot of families struggle with this. And, so yeah, there's a lot of families who could use my support and who are using my support. And it's been wonderful.
What is the key message that you want to share with people, parents out there? Like, what is the message that you want the world to know about what you do?
I would say that I know as a therapist and as a mom, if you're a parent that's truly struggling with extreme picky eating or a feeding challenge, I know how stressful it is on so many levels. But then what I would want to say is when you find the right support, someone who specializes in this area, you can absolutely make transformation and help your child and help your family and reach your goals. You have to get the right support and someone who truly specializes in this area to get you to where you need to be.
What problems? Thank you for that. And that's so true because it's so much harder trying to do stuff by yourself, right? And I see
Yes.
a lot of people and do things by themselves where you can work with an expert. And this is, I'm assuming, why you're getting out there and talking to people is that probably people don't know about you, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a world of opportunity out there, and this changes the game. Have a system, to have a step-by-step process, because people oftentimes go and get overwhelmed. Like they get told so much information. They're on YouTube looking for all these crazy answers,
Yes.
and there's no defined process. But what's really interesting about you is have a system, you have a method and a process that's crystal clear for your clients, right?
Yes. I do. It is crystal clear, and it's based on it's based on research, from all my trainings. I mean, it is truly a system that's been put in place to help with these struggles. And it's, usually when families come to see me, they've tried everything. They've maybe seen other specialists, or they're looking for tips on Instagram, and it can be overwhelming for parents because they just get kind of bounced around trying little things that might help. But once you get an expert who truly understands and can hold your hand and walk you through it, absolutely that transformation can be made.
So good, so good. So talk to me about some of the mistakes and problems you're seeing that parents are making in this space, or anyone's making in this space.
Okay. I would say things that say that again, things that parents are maybe doing that are.
Yeah, the mistakes and problems that you see parents making out there, like that you
Yeah.
see.
I would say one, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but parents thinking that their child is being poorly behaved at the dinner table or
Uh,
defiant. So that would be
yeah,
one mistake, maybe, is just helping a parent understand that if a child is truly struggling with food, it's not that they're being bad. We want to understand the cause. Like, is it sensory? Is it anxiety? Um, and then another mistake might
or
be,
limiting belief.
or oh, that's a good one. Yes, a limiting, oh, that's a good, that cued me. A limited belief is that they can't make
Yep.
change. I hear this all the time where parents will come to me, my kid's 12 or a teenager, and they feel like limiting belief that change can't be made. 100% change can be made. You just have to have the right approach. Yeah, and then maybe another limiting belief would be that they, as the parent, are doing a bad job. And so,
Uh,
in feeding challenges, it can affect your relationship with your child, right? So if you're offering food and you make this dinner and your child's screaming or crying, and then you, the parent, get mad and you're yelling, and it affects the parent-child dynamic and relationship. And a lot of times, moms in particular will come to me very tearful that they feel like they're doing something wrong. It's affecting their relationship with their child. They feel like change can't be made. They truly feel a sense of guilt and shame. 100% that is not an accurate belief. We as parents do the best we can do with the information we're given. And sometimes we need support.
Good, so good. I love that. Those are very powerful. And what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned on your journey in doing this that you can share?
Yeah, valuable lessons. I would say that kids are resilient. Even the most extreme cases of feeding challenges that I've worked with, kids are resilient and can make amazing progress. Other lessons I've learned is that, I don't know, I'm kind of going personal here, like on a personal level here, but like we're all human. And we as parents, whether we're struggling with the feeding, like all parents struggle with something, right? I mean, it's part of being a parent. So just, we're all human, we're all parents. Like, just support each other and be kind. And I love that I can help families in a time where they're in crisis and help them get through something that's hard.
I love these. These are so powerful. So I'll bounce back to that change. Things can't change. That is a huge one, right? Parents thinking that it's not going to get better. And there's always, it's just a lack of knowledge oftentimes, right? Or a lack of just understanding. And there's so much misinformation out there these days, and it can lead people down paths of making mistakes. But working with an expert like you changes that, right? It gives people hope, gives them a sense of fulfillment when they know that they can have an outcome with their family, especially when it comes to food, because it is so important. The other thing
Absolutely.
that I took away from what you were just saying is kids are resilient. I find, and I've seen, this is also from a personal experience, that oftentimes people think that their kids are going to fall apart. They're going to break if they don't, if they're not stern, if they're strong with their kids. And, but that's a very valuable lesson that I've taken away. Kids are resilient. They're going to adapt. They're going to grow. And I think that by putting in the right parameters in place and working through your program and having discipline and structure in their meal times, not only helps them emotionally, but mentally, and you're feeding their brain, right? So now they can think better, smarter, clearer, and their brain is growing at a more functional level,
Yes,
right? Talk to me about all
absolutely.
those things.
Yeah, I mean, yes, kids are resilient and just understanding how important nutrition is for our kiddos. Kiddos who are truly struggling with picky eating, a lot of times we can't just jump into really amazing nutrition because there's no way our kids will eat that, right? But through a process, we can address the anxiety, we can address the sensory sensitivities, the routine and structure in the home around meal times. And once that's in place, then and this is, I tell families this all the time, we have to set that foundation. And then once that's in place, then we start working on improved nutrition, a well balanced meal, eating proteins and healthy fats and fruits and vegetables, because once our kiddos are eating good nutrition, exactly what you said, it just helps them with everything, school, friendships, sports, nutrition is so important.
So, and it is in all the aspects of life. And I love what you just said. It's about having solid foundations. When
Yes.
you've got the foundations, that's when you can actually build off something, right? And so that's why what you're talking about, what you're doing is so important, is that you create those solid foundations.
Yes.
Talk to me about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean that is the key to making lasting change or lasting transformation. We have to have those foundations in place. And that's exactly what I teach within my coaching programs when I work with families. We have to have the foundation so it's solid to build the more specific strategies on top of that so that you just don't crumble and it just falls. You always have to have those foundations in place to build upon.
That's amazing. I love that context, and you're doing so well. I love all the stuff that we've been talking about today because it really resonates with me as a parent. I know that a lot of listeners here, most of my listeners are coaches, consultants, and you know, they've got families. They work at home quite often, and when you're working at home, oftentimes you have kids around you a lot. They kind of they can sometimes be a bit of a distraction when you're trying to stay focused on your business. How would you speak to a parent like that, right? Somebody that's got their home business, their kids are around, they're trying to, and then they let them go, and the next thing that the kids are in the cupboard pulling the fridge and they're grabbing the stuff that they want, and they're
Yes.
like disconnect. How would you talk about that?
I love that question because I talk to families about this all the time. That's part of what I teach families is how to have routine and structure with our kids to set them up for success. So, even if a parent's working at home and, kiddos running to the fridge or pantry, that's not a bad thing. But we want to have structure in place that we have set times for snack so that we're hungry for dinner. That is one of the foundational practices is we want to try to limit grazing because it just tops off our appetite and then we don't develop a true appetite for a mealtime. An appetite is not the only driving force to eat new foods, but it definitely can set your child up for success to maybe explore new foods if they're more hungry. But also for the working parent, part of my program I really try hard to help the parent not feel overwhelmed by what I teach them. So even if they're a working parent, helping them, helping them to set simple practices for meal planning, grocery shopping, all the strategies that can really meet a working parent where they're at. Because otherwise, it's juggling work and kids and cooking and meal prepping and meal planning. It's incredibly overwhelming. And then you throw a kid into that who won't eat. I mean, it can set some parents over the edge. It's very challenging.
Wow. So talk to me about that. So do you have in your program, do you have a structured diet like plan or program? Like that would be super helpful for me, knowing what I should be buying when, so that when I do it, like for me, I do a lot of stuff online now. So I'm like, I get
Yes.
all these things and boom, it's like, do you have something like that? That would be super helpful.
I have something very similar to that. So I have families fill out a handout that I've created where they write all of the foods that their child will eat. And then I use that handout to teach families how to introduce new foods so that we can expand their food range. And then I have handouts that I literally, when I do one-on-ones with families, will meal plan together. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And we'll use the foods that they can eat and the foods we're working towards within this meal planning handout. I have a grocery shopping handout to really help parents grocery shop so that we're giving our kids good nutrition. But it's tricky when you have a picky eater and you're trying to introduce new foods and they're not eating any new foods. So I have all these support systems in place to help with recipes and meal planning and grocery shopping and expanding
Wow.
the foods they'll eat. So yes, that's all part of what I do with families.
It's amazing. I love what you're doing. This has been such an interesting discussion today. I've had so much fun. That's awesome. And you know what? I think that there should be more of this. I think there's so many kids out there that have been limited or debilitated through not not having enough knowledge out there about this. And there's an epidemic of all kinds of distorted things going on, obesity, ADHD, a whole lot of stuff that I'm pretty sure from what I've read is related to a lot of diet related stuff and eating healthy foods. And so I applaud you for what you're doing. Thank you so much for spending time with me in this podcast today. Now, could
Thank
you please
you.
let me know, how do people get hold of you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm on Instagram. It's Little Table of Grace Coaching. My email is just Amy at littletableofgrace.com. And then my website is littletableofgrace.com. And on my website, all the ways to email me, I also do free or complimentary consult calls with families. So you can always book a free consult call with me to talk to me about your challenges. You can learn more about me. And then you as your family can decide if it's a good fit for you with working with me. But those would be the main ways to get in touch with me.
And thank you so much. And guys, we'll put all the links in the show notes as usual. Amy, it's been an honor. So good to have you here. We'll talk
Thank
again soon.
you. Awesome. Thank you so much.